The stories I'll tell you are really mysterious in nature and have secrecy written all over them because they took place in the old Soviet Union. But the person who revealed the secrets was right there in the midst of the events, and he knew quite a lot. His name was Alexei Valentinovich Smirnov. He was an engineer and former Soviet military officer, and he revealed several interesting UFO sightings and incidents in an interview with Ukrainian newspaper Nasha Gazeta. This was back on December 18, 1999. Smirnov stated that at the time of the interview with the newspaper, there were at least 10 people who resided in Ukraine and served in the Soviet armed forces with him, and they could confirm his stories. So much time have gone by, and I wasn't able to locate Smirnov, 18 years later. But listen to what he told the newspaper. Now, Smirnov was a patriot of his country, which was the USSR, and like his comrades, military engineers, he considered it his duty to develop defense weapon systems, the best of the best. In the 1980s, they knew that it could take Pershing missile just 8 minutes to reach the Soviet borders. Smirnov and his colleagues had to create a missile that would be able to shoot down the Pershings during these 8 minutes. The problem Soviets faced was that while operating at the supersonic speed, their missile became engulfed by a plasma hat flying in the thick layers of the atmospheres. The missile's maneuverability was lost, and it could not be controlled. Thousands of Soviet researchers had tried to improve their missile's design. Smirnov had access to the Tupolev Design Bureau's albums. They contained photographs and technical descriptions of UFOs. Those in charge of the project supposed that such photos and drawings could enhance Soviet designers' creativity. Smirnov recalled that design engineers shared the story based on factual events. Pyotr Grushin, another famous Soviet rocket designer, he was the Russian scientist who designed the V-750 rocket that shot down the U-2 reconnaissance plane, which was flown by American pilot Francis Gary Powers. Now, Smirnov recalled that Grushin was ordered to get a UFO to be shot down from the sky. And actually it took place at the end of 1978 when the UFO hovered over the vast Soviet Sarin-Shagan anti-ballistic testing range on the steppe by the lake Balkhash, Kazakhstan, at the altitude of 30 kilometers. The Sarin-Shagan test site conducts work on strategic anti-aircraft defense, anti-ballistic missile defense, and anti-satellite systems. The Soviet missile scored a direct hit. The object, the UFO, burst into many fragments. For 1 week, several large military units searched the area. Those soldiers who found fragments were given leave as a reward. The fragments showed that the UFO consisted of unusual elements. They resembled electronic boards of modern TV set, except that their elements consisted of atoms and molecules skillfully mounted on silica base. Mankind doesn't have the know-how yet to mount elementary particles, but Grushin was able to use this so-called prompting. Modern Russian anti-aircraft missiles, nose and rudder controls are similarly coated with granite. It is actually silicon installed through the method of plasma spray. Because of such technology, Soviet designers were able to create a missile able to cross the supersonic barrier in the thick layers of the atmosphere and shoot down Pershings over the United States. Smirnov had a few other episodes he wanted to reveal. So, as we know, he served in the Soviet Army in one of the most turbulent periods in the Soviet history. And he was at the testing range of the Soviet anti-air defense forces. The date of this episode was July 26, 1981, and it took place at 5:10 a.m. And those international UFO researchers who listen to my presentations should check out what else happened on July 26, 1981. That morning, Smirnov woke up and was filled with a sense of dread because he was to observe missile launches later the same morning. He approached an open window. In the pre-dawn sky, he observed two suns. One was the usual, and the other a sinister red sphere, red ball. The engineer decided that what he saw was an optical phenomenon and did not take a second look. Soon thereafter, he and 50 more officers were in the meeting area before leaving for the testing range. At the same time, the crimson sphere, flying at incredible speed, approached them from the south, hovered over their heads for 5 seconds, and then turned around and disappeared in the eastward direction. Soviet engineers were shocked. They knew perfectly well that such a maneuver at the given velocity and altitude was impossible according to terrestrial physics. No human being would survive such turns and the overloads involved. No terrestrial flying craft would be able to fly in such manner. Later, while discussing the incident, Soviet officers recalled strong, baseless fear that they all experienced at the time. Now, Smirnov lived in Kiev at the time of the interview, and another witness, Yelena Grigorievna Zaslavskaya, resided nearby, and she could attest to his story, according to the former engineer. She was one of the town's residents and wife of the officer, one of the officers, who went to the hospital because of the stress caused by the UFO. The townspeople quietly discussed that incident. They all knew about secret orders that forced unit commanders to report collected information about UFOs, document in special forms, and send to the designated military unit in Moscow. For Smirnov's colleagues, such orders were quite timely. They had interesting reports to send to the Setka program, and I have described a Setka program in my previous videos, and those who have not been familiar with this program should watch them, because this was the top Soviet governmental UFO research program conducted by Soviet armed forces, down to every soldier. They had to collect information and report to those who were obliged to study it, whose duty was to check out all the information and reports. Now, the airspace over the testing range was divided into sectors. Each sector was observed by special radio telescope that registered all flight details of launched missiles. Thus, visiting UFOs were photographed frequently. Reports about UFOs were then sent to the appropriate place. Smirnov recalled at least 20 such reports. And then he also recalled something else, which took place on the Iranian border in 1985. It happened on August 17 of 1985. At 3 o'clock at night, reports came in to the headquarters from the testing areas that numerous objects, crosses, rings, and bright dots appeared in the night sky. The officer on duty, Lieutenant Colonel Valentin Ivanovich Khan, issued orders to photograph the objects. There were altogether 11 kilometers of film that was shot. The orders to the unit were to develop the film and write a report about the incident. Lieutenant Colonel Pyotr Sergeyevich Milishchuk was in charge of the project. He resided in Nezhin, Ukraine at the time of the interview in 1999. Lieutenant Colonel Alim Antonovich Ustimenko, responsible for the technical portion of the project, resided in Lokhvitsa, Ukraine. There were 30 illustrations in the report. Several types of objects were registered. The main one was a huge white cross against dark sky. It had two crossing bars, each 800 meters long. It hovered in the sky for a long time and then disappeared, as if into thin air. The other group of objects consisted of rings. 7 white rings visible against the dark sky. They moved all the time. 2 of the rings flew parallel course, and then the smaller one was immersed into the larger, and there remained but 1 ring. The third group of objects consisted of bright dots. Strong light emitted from a bright dot in the sky and diffused like a cone-like manner. The light was very intensive and did not abate anywhere along the luminescence. The report, like other such reports, was sent to Moscow. Smirnov and his colleagues made no further inquiries. The Cold War was in full swing, and they were trying to create new missile technology. Who knows what hovered over the Soviet testing ranges and facilities? Perhaps UFOs, perhaps the adversary's intelligence gathering equipment. The Soviets did observe that, as a rule, strange objects had appeared right before new missile tests. When the Ukrainian was asked about his opinion as to the nature of UFOs, Smirnov replied that he is an engineer, a materialist, and he is against anything mystical or metaphysical. He was certain that alien intelligence exists. He also knew that our current level of knowledge did not allow us, human beings, to communicate with them, aliens. He added, one can fantasize as much as possible that is how things are now. Smirnov often observed rockets piercing the ozone layer of the atmosphere and the harsh cosmic radiation entering the atmosphere. It was a stunning spectacle. Half of the sky was taken by waves of blinding white color. We feel pride, but do we really understand what happens at the moment? Maybe our experiments, he added, cause pain to an alien intelligence that coexists with us in some other dimension, similar to how a human being would feel pain if a nail pierced his skin. So they send objects to us in order to understand who we are, what we want, and why we do what we do, surmised former military engineer Smirnov. I'll bring you more fascinating tales from the old Soviet Union and modern Russia as relate to UFO and USO research, because there is a lot to tell and share. Thank you.